The presidential and National Assembly elections, INEC has announced that it will not be conducting election in 240 polling units. We'll tell you why on the show today. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Let's begin with news coming from the National Board for Technical Education that the federal government has now directed that all polytechnics in the country shut down until after the forthcoming general election. The directive was contained in a circular issued by the Federal Minister of Education, directing the Executive Secretary of the National Board for Technical Education, Professor Idris Bogaji, to communicate to rectors as well as provosts of Polytechnic. And this is coming just a few days after a similar directive was given to shut down universities across Nigeria. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission says election will not hold in 240 polling units across the country. Chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakub, says this. He made this known at the meeting with leaders of political parties earlier today in Abuja. In his words, nobody chose to vote in those polling units. Now, let's get more perspective in this report.
The electoral umpire meets the political players contesting for votes. This kind of meeting is to enhance transparency and improve the credibility of the Electoral Commission. The chairman of INEC brings his visitors up to speed with plans and preparations of the commission to conduct the election in 176,846 polling units. But he says there will be no election in 240 polling units.
There are 240 polling units without registered voters spread across 28 states and the Federal Capital Territory. They range from 1 polling unit to 12 polling units in each state and the FCT, except Taraba and Imo states with 34 and 38 polling units respectively. No new registrants choose the polling units and no voters indicated interest to transfer to them during the last continuous voter registration exercise, mainly for security reasons. This means that no elections will be held in these polling units.
The political parties are also largely satisfied with the disposition of INEC towards discharging their primary responsibility of conducting elections. They also worry about the harsh political climate created by politicians.
It is an abhorrence and crudity, if not savagery, to see state governors denying campaign venues to political parties other than their own. This is crude, undemocratic, primitive, and uncivilized. Finally, I would want to admonish party leaders that having observed that the elections are conducted free, fair, and credible, the result should be accepted for the love of our country.
The political parties represented here will now return to their campaigns as the date for voting draws nearer. Meanwhile, the INEC chairman assured that the commission will make deliberate efforts to ensure no voter is disenfranchised. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
Senior political correspondent Ayo Zugbaku is here with me in the studio for more on this development. When INEC says election will not hold in 240 polling units, is a kind of story that you need to help the viewer understand, because it's easy to just run away with the story until you do some calculations to find out that that's just some 0.1% of the total number of polling units in Nigeria. Help us make sense of the reasons INEC is given this time.
I want to start by telling our viewers that there's no cause for alarm.
Indeed.
It's not in any way targeted at disenfranchising anybody. Now, we have situations whereby we've covered the election in the past, and you have a secondary school, a primary school, a venue that they have like 5-6 polling units.
Indeed.
In INEC bids to make sure that, we decongest most of these polling units, that, we don't want more than 500 people in a particular polling unit. We want to create more polling units. In one secondary school, they might concentrate like 10 polling units in that secondary school, and you discover that at the end of the day, the purpose had been defeated, that people will come and some of those polling units will be vacant. And those polling units that are vacant, that people are not voting there, they've gone through all their rerun and they've checked it. That's how impactful would this exercise be how impactful with this polling unit. Our record of election in the past, the last presidential election, the last election we've had here, how has it affected this particular? And they've looked at what I would call the redundant polling units.
Okay.
Polling units that are not serving any purpose, that would not in any way disenfranchise people to arrive at this decision.
Yeah, however, when you look at the states concerned, you see Imo with 38 polling units, followed by Taraba. Some are concerned, some are already talking about perhaps the security challenges that we've witnessed and reported in this part of the country, and how much of impact that will have in voter turnout in those areas.
INEC will also do what we call their own SWOT analysis, that look areas that are, prone to violence. They won't want to risk the coppers, they won't want to risk their hard dog staff, and they will come to a conclusion that instead of having polling units at this particular flashpoint, let's concentrate security on this point and make it just one polling unit, so that people from this flashpoint can just make it down to another polling unit to vote.
Absolutely.
It's just as simple as that.
You recall also that some months ago, INEC added over 56,000 new polling units to, decongest certain polling units. How much impact do you see that have in this?
I told you earlier that
election?
For 2019 election, it needed to be a little bit more than 120,000 polling units nationwide. So INEC was looking for more accessibility, looking for how the thing is going to get friendlier. You just move in front of your house, you get your polling unit, just a walking distance from your houses. So INEC created more polling units. But in doing the analysis right, looking at the results from the off-season election, looking at the 2015 election, looking at the 2019 election, looking at the result and how it came through all these polling units, they've been able to substitute and eliminate some of these polling units. And this is what you're having here.
Very quickly, let's take a look at the voting procedure. Voting is expected to start at 8:30 a.m.
Yes.
Check and be sure your name is on the register of voters in that polling unit. It again, begs the question of logistics, because it would seem that INEC has improved very tremendously in the recent election. And now that the CBN governor is saying, don't worry, we'll give you cash, you don't expect any logistic challenge this time, do you?
All your questions today, I just get it towards like, I'm not Mr. Okoye, INEC spokesperson. But then I will tell you from what I've seen.
From what you've seen, yes, in the off-season election.
In terms of logistics, it has been eliminated. Now, you have the sensitive and non-sensitive materials leaving the state headquarters a day before, and you have a situation whereby by 7:30, electoral officers, they are the polling units already deploying their materials. And the last election I covered, I now discovered that it was the electoral officers, they've set up all their logistics. They were waiting for voters to come in. That's in Ekiti
Exactly
State.
what I was saying,
I noticed.
that it has improved.
They've improved on the arrival time. Yaga Africa, they have their statistics on checking out how the electoral officers, how did they get to get their agents, how did they get to the polling units. And in the last election, they were able to score them like 65%.
Indeed. So once you do that, once accredited, you will be issued a ballot paper.
Yep.
And then this document also says you can live or stay 300 meters away from the voting area to witness vote sorting and counting. It would seem that once you have your PVC and you have voted, you're still allowed to stay around, even
Yes,
during voting.
but you just leave that area. You leave the vicinity. When you leave the vicinity, you can just watch. And we've seen it several times. There's a kind of cordon. INEC, they have a cordon around the polling units, and they have a kind of what you use to cast your votes that make it open secret ballots, something that will cover you so that your choice and everything will be protected.
Indeed.
After that exercise, if you have 500 people at that polling station, at the end of the day, they will count one by one, and the electoral officers will make sure that the counting and sorting will be transparent. That's why you start hearing PDP, APC, PDP, APC, Labour Party, and so on and so forth. So you see it. They'll be sorting it. At the end of the day, counting one by one. And even people on that polling unit, they'll be counting with the electoral officers. It's a very interesting sight, you say, and the beauty of democracy. And at the end of the day, when they are filling the form EC8A, all the agents will now come and attest to what happened at that particular polling agent before it is transmitted electronically.
With the BVAS also comes the technology of transmitting results immediately at
Yes.
polling units. It means that every Nigerian now has the opportunity to see real time
Yes.
what the voting is at each polling unit.
It was experimented in Edo election. By Edo election, it wasn't a guesswork. We just went to the coalition center for formality in the evening, expecting the hard copy of Form EC8A across all the polling units to arrive at the state headquarters. But we've been able to track it, on the INEC website, and we had a fair idea of what the texture of the election looked like. Like in Edo State, by 4 p.m., we need a winner.
One last thing that INEC mentioned at that meeting would be its concern about attacks on political supporters during campaign. How much impact would you say that? How much work have you seen, particularly in the area of providing security for politicians? Party supporters during this campaign.
I've not seen anything. I'm afraid that even in the southeast, that people that are enthusiastic to vote for the candidates, that it might lead to apathy. 2 weeks ago, we just see Barrister Obama, Magistrate Obama, was shot on the head. The magistrate, as he was standing up, was shot. And we hear of these killings every day. And if federal government, if they don't do something to assure the people of those areas, especially not in the state capitals now, we're talking about Anambra and Imo states, we're talking about the interior areas that people will be able to exercise their franchise, it might not restore confidence for people to come out on election day to vote.
The body language is that this election will hold. So every stakeholder must get ready.
It's like signed, sealed, and delivered.
Absolutely. Senior correspondent Ayo Zugbako, thank you for talking to us tonight.